with me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, Washington signed a cornerback over the weekend. Also, a massive trade happened over the weekend, which indirectly affects the Washington Commanders. We'll talk about that here in a second. But first, I want to get to matters of business pertaining to this team, rather. And they signed a veteran corner, former first-round pick, Noah Igbinoghene, former Cowboy. So add him to the list of former Cowboys coming over from Dallas to Washington on that pipeline with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. Now, I don't see this as a real depth move at the cornerback position, more of a special teams maneuver here, which is what I said we would see, right? This is a part of that second wave that I was talking about, where you start to fill in the gaps on the roster. A lot of low-level signings, guys that really won't contribute heavily on either offense or defense, but are more for special teams purposes. The last two signings in particular, Anthony Pittman and now this one with Noah Igbinoghene, are both more special team signings than anything else. So again, I don't know if they're done or not at the cornerback position. There's still quite a few corners out there that may be able to come in and help. Obviously, they were very interested in Isaac Yiadom, and he hasn't signed anywhere yet. So who's to say what happens with that situation? But clearly they're interested in bringing in some cornerback help, which they should be. The two biggest positions left of need right now are corner and offensive tackle. So we assume that they're going to address both in the draft. To what extent will be determined by how much activity there is in free agency. So right now, doesn't seem very likely that they're going to be super aggressive at either position in free agency, which would lead you to believe that they're going to be more aggressive towards those positions via the draft. That said, I always felt like that was going to be the case with tackle. This was not a great tackle market to begin with. They weren't very aggressive in going after those tackles very early in free agency. But for the most part, nobody in the league was all that eager to go after these tackles because, again, there weren't many on the market that really piqued your interest to where you needed to go get them first. There were other positions and other players available that you needed to act on first if you wanted their services. So, I still think there is a move or two to be made at both positions. Nothing needle moving, but I think more so tackle position, you can get yourself a quality swing tackle, and I think they still need to pursue that. We'll see if they do that at some point this week or even next. But as far as a starting tackle is concerned, I don't think they're going to find one in free agency. Hence, they may be looking for one in the draft. Now, somebody brought something to my attention that I hadn't thought about all that much, and it's something to consider. And I don't know how anybody could have a depth chart, handy right now. There's really no depth chart out right now that would really tell us anything. So everything right now is hearsay to me. Even if you have visual proof, I still don't believe it, but it is something to consider because this was his former position. So all along, we've been talking about Sam Cosmi as a right guard because that's where he played last year and he played it well. But obviously, he was drafted as a tackle. He could go back out to tackle. He was not terrible as a tackle. He wasn't great. I think he's better as a guard than he is a tackle, but he never really stayed healthy at tackle. That was his biggest issue, is that he always got banged up when he was at tackle. And so we know he can play tackle. So the question now becomes, do they kick him back out to tackle, leaving Washington to have to fill the right guard void? Or do they leave him at guard and then they need two tackles? That's just another option to throw out there because if you move Cosmi back to right tackle, then you only need one tackle. They still should draft two if you ask me. But You'll only need one in terms of having a full starting line, offensive line, right? So if they were to do that, then we'd have to assume that they're going to play around with the guys that they already have on the roster, pause, and kind of shuffle the deck and see who fits where. Obviously, you could just take our starting right tackle last year, Andrew Wiley, kick him inside to right guard, and voila, problem solved. You got the two Kansas City guards at left and right guard, and then you've got Tyler Biadasz at center, and then you draft the left tackle, and then you got Sam Cosmi at right tackle. So that's one way of going about it. They still could just keep Cosmi at right guard, give Nick Allegretti an opportunity to compete at left guard, insert Tyler Biadasz at center, draft two tackles, and you start two rookie tackles. Is that ideal? No, it's never ideal to start two rookie tackles. But again, we'll see what they decide to do. But that's just something to think about. Maybe they're kicking Sam Cosmi back out to right tackle. Remember, everything has changed. Everything is on the table. Nothing is a foregone conclusion because, again, they didn't draft these players. They didn't put these players in the positions that they were playing. You got new coaches, new set of eyes, new ideologies and ideas. So everything's on the table, including moving Sam Cosmi back to right tackle. So do not remove that from your list of possibilities that could go on along the offensive line. So while we're thinking, oh my God, they got to do something, they may not be in as dire straits as we believe if they see Sam Cosmi as a tackle, right? So something to think about. We've been talking about and throwing about the idea, what if they see Benjamin St-Juste as a safety? We don't know. They could see him as a safety. We aren't sure about that. If they do see him as a safety, that would mean even more so that we need cornerback help. That would be even worse if they saw him as a safety because we have no cornerback depth whatsoever if they saw him in that light. I still think he can play the cornerback position, but we will see what they decide to do. So just, another thing to keep in mind as we continue to try to look at how this roster may be configured. But at the end of the day, I still think they can add a swing tackle. Regardless of whether Cosmi is a guard or a tackle, it doesn't matter. They still need to add a swing tackle. And I think they still have plenty of time to do that between now and the draft. Meanwhile, with the cornerback position, adding Noah Igbinoghene really doesn't solve anything for you at the cornerback position. He's more of a special teams player. He had the first touchdown of the season for the Cowboys. If you recall, they blocked a field goal on the opening drive by the Giants, and Noah Igbinoghene was the guy that scooped up that block and ran for the touchdown to kick off what would be an onslaught 40-0 in that season opener last, Sunday Night Football, I believe it was, Giants and Cowboys. So he's a special teams guy at this point of his career. To think he was a first-round pick by the Miami Dolphins, I remember when he came out of Auburn thinking they overdrafted him. There's no way that this guy is a first-round pick. And he was a wide receiver. They converted him in his second year at Auburn to corner. And it just seemed like he was super raw. And I was like, he's not ready to be a big-time contributor at the cornerback position. I felt that way in the moment when he came out. Yet the Dolphins drafted him, and it definitely turned out to be a mistake. They ended up trading him to Dallas in exchange for Kelvin Joseph, and he spent his lone season in Dallas, primarily playing special teams. He can also return kickoffs. He had 2 kickoff touchdowns in his collegiate career, so there is that, but I don't see them using him in that capacity, but you never know. You throw that out there as well. He can return kickoffs, but the guy that you have returning kickoffs, you want that to be the same guy returning punts, if at all possible. It doesn't have to be that way. You can have 2 different guys handling that job, but what you don't want is to have 2 different roster spots being tied up to a return man, right? Now, if that guy that's returning punts is also a receiver and he's good at that, and so this guy over here is returning kickoffs and he's also a special teams corner, so be it, right? As long as you're not designating an extra spot for one of those return duties, then you're fine. So, again, in a pinch, he can return kickoffs. I don't think that's something they brought him here to do necessarily, just something else to make mention of. But he's a special teams corner, nothing more, nothing less. So I wouldn't view him as cornerback depth, more of another, simple cog in the machine, guy that you bring in to help fill the roster. He may not even make the team when it's all said and done. And more likely than not, he will. But again, this is what you do when you're rebuilding the roster, right? I told you, guys, this is bad for a guy like Christian Holmes, right? Because these are the types of players that take his place. A guy like Noah Igbinoghene takes Christian Holmes' place. So, again, like I said, you're going to see a lot of these. All those guys that were on the back end of the roster that were Rivera guys that were drafted in the 6th and 7th round and undrafted, all those guys are pretty much gone, right? So, this is one of those signings I was telling you about. Like, guys like that are gone, and guys like Noah Igbinoghene are going to be taking guys like Christian Holmes' place on this roster. So, there was also some other news that wasn't Washington Commanders related, but indirectly it affected the Washington Commanders. And, of course, I'm speaking of the Justin Fields trade. It's one of those final quarterback dominoes that we were looking to see drop in this offseason. It took a while, but after all the quarterback movement of the week, it felt like this was imminent, right? After seeing Sam Howell get traded and then Kenny Pickett getting traded, already seeing Desmond Ridder be traded and Mac Jones be traded, it felt like this had to happen sooner rather than later. Honestly, the Steelers got a deal here because the Bears just simply waited too late. They waited until they thought the market would take shape, and instead other teams decided to go get other quarterbacks, and it shrunk their market to the point where they essentially had to give Justin Fields away for a song. So that's not our problem. Don't really care about the compensation. That's not what's important here. What's important is that that crowd that was screaming, Washington's going to trade up to number 1. Washington's going to trade up to number 1. Oh my God, they just got another 3rd round pick. They're building up all this ammo. They're rounding up all this ammunition to go up to number 1. And that crowd got a little bit louder after the Sam Howell trade. They were quieted for good. Silenced for good with this deal, as now the path to number 2 overall for Washington is pretty simple. It's been mapped out for them. And look, for those of us who understood what was going on and knew the assignment, we already knew, right? I wasn't out here pumping poison into the veins of the fan base talking that foolishness about trading up to 1. But I wasn't going to stop anybody else who was trying to, because again, I'm not here to try to correct people who don't want to understand the truth, right? If you want to live in a fantasy world and in some kind of alternative universe, knock yourself out. Who am I to tell you what is or isn't going to happen? But I'd already spoken my piece a long time ago that there was no way, because the Bears were in control. And the final straw for me with any kind of notion that we were going up to 1 potentially was when they went to the combine. They had a chance to actually sit down with had a chance to sit down with Caleb Williams, and they came away from the combine even more impressed with him. At that point, there's nothing else to talk about. He had already said he would play anywhere. There was no truth to him not wanting to play in Chicago. That was done. It was a done deal. They walked away even more impressed, and they said, we got to move Justin. So now that's done, and it's been really nice to not string things along, because there were a number of pockets of the fan base that needed to be silenced. And it seemed like those pockets of fans were silenced rather quickly, and I appreciate that. They could have strung, in past draft seasons, these situations have been strung out, and you got to hear this crowd just in your ear for no reason throughout the draft season, and you're like, would you just be quiet? It's not happening. And it started with this Caleb Williams to Washington, and I thought we'd have to deal with this a lot longer. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought this thing would be strung out a bit longer because they had a window to trade Justin Fields prior to anything really kicking off this offseason, and they didn't. And they said, we're going to wait, and we're going to let the market materialize, and it really backfired on them. So I thought after it backfired, they might just wait even longer. So I just figured this is going to be a part of the draft process for us as Commanders fans. We're going to have to deal with this. There was also a very brief Kirk Cousins to Washington movement, and I was like, would he just sign somewhere so you guys can shut the hell up because he's not coming back here? And that happened very quickly. It literally happened on the first day of the tampering period. So kudos to them for getting it done. He went to Atlanta. That crowd had a sock stuffed in their mouth quickly. Then we got to the Sam Howell for, starter and let's trade back crowd. Let's trade back and get offensive line help. I was like, okay, you're not understanding the premise of what the number 2 overall pick means and what you need to do with that. And so that got quieted with the Sam Howell trade. So now that was done and dead. And then you had we're going up the number 1 for Caleb Williams crowd, and they were getting even louder, and that was silenced once and for all. And so my guy Derek B, I was about to tweet something out to that effect, and my guy Derek B beat me to it. He said, man, the trade back, want to start Sam Howell crowd, dead. The trade up to number 1, go get Caleb Williams crowd, dead. Just like that. Bang, bang. Both dead. And now we can just move on with business as usual. Let's actually talk about what is really going to happen, which is Washington selecting a quarterback at number 2. Not trading back. This whole narrative now of, Minnesota trying to get up into the top 3. Yeah, that's cool. They can try. Just like we could have tried to get up to 1, but we didn't control anything. The Bears did. The Vikings can want to come up here, but they don't control anything, right? The teams in front of them that they're trying to get to their selection control all the cards. They're more likely hunting for number 4 overall with Arizona, okay? That's the team that they're probably looking to do business with. And if not the Cardinals, then the Los Angeles Chargers. One of the 2 teams there in front of the Giants. But the likelihood is they're not coming into the top 3 picks unless New England is interested, because we're not. We're not trading out of 2. That's been the thought, the prevailing thought the entire time. And now I think that's been crystallized with the moves that have been made over the last about 4 days or so, trading Sam Howell, and then the Bears finally trading away Justin Fields to clear the path for them to make the selection at number 1 overall. So it's crystal clear now what the Commanders intend on doing it to, which is taking a quarterback, which was never in doubt for most of us. Now the question is, whom are they going to take? And I got one final thing to throw into this mix just to interject. I don't think this is going to happen, but this is the season for me. This is the draft season particularly where I'm very hypersensitive to past mistakes. And so I just want to throw this out there just as another point of reference, something else that you just need to put in the back of your mind. I'm not telling you to put it at the forefront because I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't want to make the same mistake that we made back in 2022. Okay? And so I've been very cautious with Drake May because I understand the tape isn't great and you have to project with him. But I made the mistake of thinking that Justin Herbert wasn't going to be a great NFL quarterback because I didn't love the tape. And there were parts of his leadership that didn't wow me. And then the Oregon offense that he played in. And I found all kinds of reasons not to love Justin Herbert. And instead of focusing on the things that he did bring to the table, I focused on all the things that I didn't think he brought to the table. And I ignored the size, the arm talent, the athleticism, all the traits that would make him a really good prospect, and focused on the things that were negatives. And it turned out that the things that were positives won out. So I'm more cognizant of that with Drake May. I want to make sure I do the same thing here with J.J. McCarthy, okay? Because of the 2022 draft, when we talked about all these receivers, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Drake London And all these different receivers, right? Hell, we even talked about Jameson Williams, who was injured and we knew wasn't going to really play and contribute in 2022. We even talked about him. We never considered Jahan Dotson, and then when he was drafted, everybody was looking crazy and thinking that he sucked and he was this and he was that. And I had to try to talk some sense into you, like, hey, this guy's actually good, you know. But because we didn't talk about him, a lot of you didn't even realize who the hell he was. So I don't want us to do that this time with the quarterback position. I don't think J.J. McCarthy's going to be the pick at 2. I can't say that he won't. Now, you're going to hear people, this will be one of the things that you'll hear people trying to throw into the mix is J.J. McCarthy. Just understand that any and everything is in play. Sans for Washington trading out of the pick. But as far as who they take, it could be Drake May, it could be Jaden Daniels, it could even be J.J. McCarthy. I don't think it will be. I don't think he warrants a top 3 pick in this draft. That's not our problem if New England decides that he's their guy. I don't think he's the guy here in Washington. But don't discount that notion. You're going to hear people bring it up. Don't lose your shit if you don't want any parts of him, because I don't either. I don't think it's going to happen, but I just want to throw that out there so that if it does happen on draft night, you're not caught off guard and like, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? You know, just have it in the back of your mind. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the pick is still going to be one of 2 guys, Jaden Daniels or Drake May, but just consider the possibility that J.J. McCarthy is rising up boards. And we know that when the evaluators and the coaching staff finally get their hands on the tape, we start to see guys that have been dismissed by draft pundits and people like you and me out here as fans who we like better, but the people who actually know what's going on in the field, know the concepts, have talked to people, you start to see guys rise up boards. So just keep that in mind as we get deeper into this process. Again, I feel 97% confident that the pick is either May or Daniels. But just keep in mind that 3% that's out there is J.J. McCarthy. I don't see that 3% turning into 5 or 10 at any point in this process. It's 3%, and it's going to stay there. But just consider that 3%. Don't dismiss it. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so now we're into week 2 of free agency. So now the dust is starting to settle. Smoke clears from week 1 and all of that activity. And boy, was there a ton. I don't think they're done yet. I still think there are moves to be made. I still think they're going to be somewhat aggressive in this second wave of free agency. Generally, if you're aggressive in the first wave, you're a lot less aggressive in the second. I could see us still being somewhat aggressive as this second wave of free agency gets underway. So don't turn off your notifications just yet. Okay, Washington could still be filling out their roster with a bunch of low-level signings. I still think there's a solid tackle signing somewhere in there of a swing tackle or some guy like that. And I wouldn't be shocked if there's a corner signing as well. I don't see them doing too much more like at defensive end or linebacker. They've done enough at those positions. I don't see them adding in another safety or anything like that. They're not adding another tight end. So you could kind of see that the window of what is needed at this point is shrunk significantly. At this point, it's either a corner, offensive tackle, or it could be a depth piece at some other position that we're not thinking of, right? But with the re-signing of Jeremy Reeves, safety is completely closed, right? With the signing of Zach Ertz, I don't think they're going to do anything else free agent-wise at tight end. I think that's more of a draft thing if they were deciding to upgrade that position even further. Same with defensive end. After they re-signed F.A. Obata, don't think they're doing anything else there, right? So I think all of that is pretty much closed off. Just tackle and corner at this point are the two positions that I could see them maybe signing two guys, at the cornerback position and one guy at tackle. But just throwing that out there. Keep your eyes peeled to see what's going on. But the major happenings of free agency are done. They're pretty much done. So we'll see what this week brings. But anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I'll be live over on Rio's channel tonight, 8:30 p. So I don't know what time Rio's starting. I shouldn't tell you that it's 8:30. I know I'll be joining at 8:30. I can't speak for what time the show is actually taking place, but I'll be up there at 8:30. They could be starting at 8 for all I know. But I think Rio has already started to promote, so just follow what Rio has going on there. As a matter of fact, let me check my phone. I'm pretty sure he tweeted out something last night, and I can just look at that post, and I'll be able to tell you what time he has set it for. So, yeah, 8:30. So, yep, 8:30 p. over on Rio's channel. It'll be me and the fellas. Rio's, Ed, Rico, and myself, all chopping it up, talking NFL free agency with our beloved Washington Commanders and all the moves that have been made, and what do all of these moves kind of signify, and how we feel about everything that's been done, etc., etc. So if you ain't doing nothing, pull up, support the movement, and we'll look forward to chopping it up with you guys later on this evening. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care.